It's exactly 5 minutes 7 a.m. Good morning, and this is Smart Means Business. I officially welcome you to this particular segment, and that's the news recap where we go through the day's previous news stories. But of course, like I say, don't forget to check us out on DSTV channel 372 and channel 394 on Go TV as we drive the business, as we give you the business details right straight to your sitting room to ensure that you make the right business decisions. And to kick off the hour just right now is the oil and gas. The International Oil and Gas Summit that was presided by President Yoweri Museveni yesterday, where he denounced the European Union proposal to stop the oil and gas project that is going on. That's being transferred from Uganda to Tanzania to be refined. Let's have the details of this report.
As oil and gas sector has transitioned from having only an exploration to new explorations and preparation of the discovered oil fields for production. The developments also include putting in place infrastructure for both commercialization of the discovered 6.5 billion barrels of oil and gas resources and facilitating the developments in the sector. The final investment decision for Uganda's oil and gas projects, approximately worth $20 billion, was signed in February 2022. This was by the Uganda National Oil Company with its joint partners Total EP Uganda and the Chinese National Oil Company and the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development.
The jobs created. There's the skilled labor, there is the semi-skilled labor, there is the unskilled labor, and you're looking at like 160,000 jobs across all projects being created in this period, right? So those are things that make any country smile when you have such huge projects coming into your place, because it sends a signal. The people internally are happy, there's money, and it has spin-off effects. The jobs, you can't, they are evident. The investor confidence that we can rally this kind of investor right now into our economy sends a very good signal for us internationally. And that's what you want as a country. So definitely we are seeing this contribution as something the long awaited for.
The policy framework for the oil and gas sector highlights key issues, including 7 sets of regulations on technical, health, safety and environment, national content, among others. All major oil and gas developments, including the Tilenga, Kingfisher, the East African Crude Oil Pipeline, and the refinery projects were first subjected to a preliminary environmental and social screening process that informed the conceptual design of the projects. Subsequently, a rigorous risk impact assessment process was undertaken in line with the national environment laws and the international best practices. The environmental challenge is the management of impacts associated with the oil and gas industry, like the oil spills, fires, waste management, contamination of the environment, and therefore there is a potential risk to adversely impact on areas located within the Graben, like the national game parks, forests, and water bodies, including Lake Albert and River Nile.
Before any project is commenced, the National Environment Management Authority has to issue what we call an ESIA, Environmental Social Impact Assessment Report. How is that obtained? The company has to demonstrate, it has to demonstrate to NEMA that we have these systems in place to ensure that we are not going to affect the environment where we are operating, we are not going to affect the people, we are not going to affect the plantation and so on, the forest cover, all these aspects. So before that license or that permit is issued, there is supposed to be a public hearing where the people affected by a project are invited and the project speaks to them in the presence of NEMA and other critical government authorities.
In an article written by Dr. Joseph Kobsheshe, a director of Environment and Health Safety at Petroleum Authority of Uganda, he states the oil and gas industry could be a solution to greenhouse gas emissions reduction. This is by providing more Ugandans access to cleaner energy, eliminate emissions associated with import of petroleum products, provide alternative sources of livelihoods such as LPG, and lessen the dependency on environmentally degrading economic systems.
The opportunity now has been that actually the goal of the sector is to ensure that when petroleum activities in these areas cease, we are leaving the area in a much better place than we found it, and that we call the net gain program. So the net gain program being implemented within the Murchison Falls National Park is aimed at ensuring that overall there is a net positive gain in terms of biodiversity as we implement the petroleum activities.
The category of emissions is expected to increase as Uganda becomes more prosperous through industrialization. Likewise, the emissions from the energy sector are expected to increase as more Ugandans access energy and our country moves closer to ending energy poverty. The Petroleum Authority of Uganda says a rich regulatory framework that came with these projects of such magnitude will also be used to regulate similar activities in the future.
A number of environmental laws, regulations, standards incorporating oil and gas aspects have been developed. Just as an example, the Petroleum Waste Management Regulations of 2019, we never used to have those. Those were developed in 2019, and they guide the way in which petroleum waste is managed. The National Oil Spill Regulations of 2020, again, these regulate the prevention, preparedness, and response to oil spills. The National Oil Spill Contingency Plan, again, very specific in terms of how the strategic environment assessment, which was developed in 2013, and the list could go on.
National Environmental Management Authority acknowledges the sensitivity of projects such as the Tilenga project earmarked by Total that has launched biodiversity programs to conserve the flora and fauna of the areas in which they operate.
Purposes of this project, sensitivity mapping was done for the area to identify which area is more sensitive in terms of conservation. After mapping the sensitive areas, then you apply avoidance so that you avoid the sensitive areas. For example, fishing breeding areas or breeding sites for wildlife. You avoid them. Areas where wildlife, for example, leak salt leak areas, you avoid them, you know. So you identify sensitive areas and you avoid them. That's avoidance. But like I said, from avoidance, you go next. But before you leave avoidance, for example, the pipeline has avoided wetlands of international importance, all Ramsar sites have been avoided, protected areas have been avoided as much as possible, water bodies. So that's avoidance. This is the initial stage. Now, after you've avoided, you go into mitigating or reducing impact. And that's largely about the scale, really, and the technology you employ.
Statistics demonstrate that no one-size-fits approach if the world is to tackle the climate change problem. Uganda's greenhouse gas emissions from industrial processes and the products are just 0.55% of its total emissions.
For instance, the East African crude oil pipeline is going to be buried, largely buried. It's going to be underground. It is also going to be insulated. And all these are measures to ensure that the operation of that pipeline does not affect the people, it does not affect the environment. There is going to be plantation. We are going to plant trees along the pipeline route to ensure that whatever was destroyed during the construction has been replaced and much more.
it's not enough to mitigate and reduce, but we also want to deal with what will remain when we've done everything else. What will remain? What land will remain under use so that we compensate it? Not compensating it in terms of money for payment, in terms of conservation value.
In a nutshell, a robust policy, legal, institutional, monitoring, and compliance enforcement framework has been put in place to ensure that oil and gas activities mutually coexist with the environment and social well-being of communities in the areas in which the activities are being undertaken. It is therefore important that Ugandans do not allow themselves to be used to demonize the country's oil and gas projects, while other countries continue to use their oil and gas resources to prosper. Rana Nahabwe, Smart 24 TV.
And that was a report right there regarding, of course, the oil and gas in Uganda, which is going to be the mining, which is going to start with effect with 2025. Recently, the Parliament of the European Union, of course, denounced the project, the ECO project that was going on, whereby the oil that is coming from Uganda heading to Tanzania to be refined, since it leaves the country when it's crude, due to the climate changes. Of course, lately there has been a move regarding climate change globally, and that's why majority of the energy that is being used lately has been much more of electricity. And remember, there were proposals regarding the path where the line is going to be passing, the destruction of the vegetation, and of course including the settlement of the people. And this was accompanied by Ugandans going to the European Union headquarters, that's in Uganda, at Crystal Towers, to riot regarding this particular aspect. Of course, according to a report here, the EU, the European Union Parliament resolution that's calling for an end to oil and gas development projects in the East African region was denounced by the Ugandan President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. This happened yesterday, as Museveni stated during the International Oil and Gas Summit that the project timeline would not be obstructed, but saw environmental preservation as essential to the prolonged process. All right, away from that, let's head over to Kasita, Uganda, and as traders are demanding for incentives, and of course there has been the unfair taxation policies that have been affecting their businesses, yet they are trying to recover from the COVID-19 effect. Let's have the details of this report.
They appeared before Thomas Tayebwa, the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, in the company of Association's Chair Thaddeus Musoke, to discuss some of the problems facing the traders, as well as some suggestions they believe will benefit both the government and Ugandan traders. According to the chairperson of Kasita, many farms were severely impacted by the COVID-19 times and are only now beginning to recover, if not still fighting to do so. It would be wiser if the government promoted non-tax incentives which benefit everyone instead of tax holidays which just favor a select few.
As Kasita, we recommend that the government can champion non-tax incentives. Non-tax incentives or strategy. This is a strategy whereby the government can design infrastructure. Like currently, we hear the government is trying to repair the levee. This is good news to us, to fully utilize the lake, because those are cheap means of transport. And these ones benefit majority of Ugandans than tax incentives where few companies benefit. If few companies benefit, so the few Ugandans who are paying taxes, you find that they are overtaxed.
In spite of several meetings they have had with various government institutions, according to Musoke, the majority of the dealers are out of business as a result of bank loans, and their assets are currently being auctioned. He continues by saying that accessing the government recovery fund, which was placed in the Uganda Development Bank and other commercial banks, has also been difficult due to numerous restrictions and high interest rates.
Loans accumulated We try to engage different government agencies and the banks. You find that what was designed wasn't effective enough, because currently banks are auctioning buildings, auctioning property, and the business community even cannot access top-ups. We are trying, as CASITA, lobbying different government agencies and requesting your office to see how best we can assist our comrades who are in such a very tricky situation. The government allocated a recovery fund.
The members have also expressed their displeasure with the 18% value-added tax that was recently imposed on animal feeds but had been removed by the 2017 Amendment Act. Some claim that this is an attempt to cripple the agricultural sector.
So we are coming up to realize that recently most of our companies trading in the poultry and animal feed concentrate are being asked to pay taxes of import duty on items that we brought in and cleared through the normal process of URA, and they were duly released. Then URA comes up to say that unfortunately there was a misclassification, and because of that we are supposed to pay backwards import duty of 18%. And as far as we are import duty of 10%. And this is really in colossal amounts of money. But we also understand that unless the objective of URA is to bankrupt us by engaging us to pay this unfair tax through their own mistake, it wouldn't be fair. So it is upon that reason that we have tried to come back to Parliament, who we believe are the framers of this law, to interpret it clearly. But
in his response to the members of CASITA, the Deputy Speaker noted their concerns and forwarded their petition to the Committee of Trade, where it will be discussed with all parties involved in an effort to find a permanent solution to the problems raised by CASITA.
You presented them. They are very strong and well-documented issues, which I will refer to the Committee on Trade to go and do a comprehensive study and engage the different stakeholders. Through this engagement, some of the issues, especially right now, the taxes on clothes, okay? Those ones, you can even hand at committee level. Because we would go back to what did we agree last time.
Yes.
Why are you URA now charging different from what was agreed with the minister and captured within the agreement? Okay? So those ones, I will refer to them.
As much as Parliament is eager to back CASITA, Tayebwa also urges that it is time for them to begin backing government's import substitution. He urges that they do not want an economy that is totally run by foreigners, which has put strain on the nation's infrastructure, but rather one where both native people and the foreigners work side by side.
I'm proud to be importing 100 containers without exporting any. This is the question you have to sit down as CASITA. You look at, are you proud? Because you're not only, you find you generate income of 10 billion a month, but you don't employ more than 2 people. Because the only people you employ are people to just clear the containers. They keep moving. But you have enough capital. You have enough exposure to even start producing some of these products which you're importing. Some of the factories of the people you're importing from, you're even richer than them. But now they are keeping jobs in their country. The cost of doing business in Uganda has tremendously gone down. So this is where we need you as CASITA. How can you indeed support the import substitution strategy of government?
And that's it regarding that particular report of CASITA, as the members of the Business Support Association in Uganda petitioned that's the government over what they claimed as the unfair taxes imposed on the trade as well. Most businesses are still trying to recover from the effects of the COVID-19. They also want the government to support the non-incentives which they claim will benefit all Ugandans. Okay, now away from that, let's head straight to the microfinance and the SACCOs as one of the major functions of the Tier 4 Microfinance Institutions and Money Lenders Act, that's 2016, is to establish SACCOs, the SACCO Stabilization Fund, and establishing a SACCO Saving Protection Scheme. Microfinance has brought up regulations on TAR, of course, for the help for small enterprises to have access to savings based on their levels as a step towards poverty eradication that's in Uganda. Let's have the details of this report.
Microfinance is a category of banking service offered to unemployed or low-income people or groups who would not otherwise have access to financial services. The Ugandan system is divided into 4 tiers, with Tier 4 being intended to help those who run small businesses and savings groups. As a framework for Ugandan microfinance institutions, the Bank of Uganda released a policy statement on microfinance regulation.
Recognized the effort that had been put in place from the different groups which were working under microfinance business in Uganda. And the tiered system acknowledged that it might be necessary to regulate these institutions. And these institutions at that time, actually until today, do include institutions like the SACCOs. They include non-deposit microfinance institutions. They also include money lenders. They include also self-help groups or VISLAs, if you may like it. So for that matter, we are here on a very serious business to ensure that the government of Uganda that established that legal framework and regulatory framework of the Tier 4 microfinance institutions will therefore try to put forward the guidelines as per Tier 4 Act, Section 100, which operationalizes UMRA in this particular sector.
Ugandans should understand that those that are under Tier 4, the SACCOs, the village savings and loan associations, the money lenders are regulated by UMRA. We have a regulator. Before the enactment of Tier 4 money lenders, Tier 4 Microfinance Institutions, the Money Lenders Act, we used to have issues with the SACCOs. SACCOs, I mean managers, chairpersons of SACCOs would connive and swindle members' savings. But now, with the creation of this law and also creation of the regulator, these days we don't have issues to do with the swindling of members' savings in SACCOs, and also money lenders to some extent have been regulated. So you should understand that these financial giants that are in Tier 1, 2, and 3 are regulated by Bank of Uganda. And therefore, those that, the savers, the depositors that keep their monies with those institutions should understand that their monies are safe.
But before the business community can take advantage of microfinance, there are a number of things that must be done. Stakeholders suggest that a well-amended microfinance law will aid in Uganda's economic development and educate the public as to who is eligible for these loans. They also encourage Ugandans to develop the practice of saving because it is very advantageous in the corporate sector.
Proper regulation goes ahead, we shall have a lot of improvement. We shall be seeing a vibrant financial sector
which is taking care of all these, which is trying to work on all these vices that we have been going through, seeing people swindling other people's money, getting interest rates that are charged the way they want. So we are trying to make sure all that is very well controlled.
Some Ugandans have tried to save, but they only save just for, can I say, for convenience, just for association. Just they don't make meaningful savings. You find a person saving how much? For us, we save every week. How much? 2,000. Every week, you save 2,000. So, on a daily basis, divide 2,000 by 7. How much will that be? Around 600 point something. So that means on a daily basis, that member saves 600 shillings. Now 600 shillings. How many years do you need to save for a bicycle? With 600 shillings. So we want to, as we come up with this, but we want also to go sensitize, work on the mindset of Ugandans, talk to them. They should embrace saving culture.
Any Ugandan is eligible for any loan as long as it exists and you are agreeable to the terms. So it covers everybody, and because they are Ugandans, we therefore can regulate them under the microfinance system.
Microfinance offers better loan repayment rates than traditional banking, which assists the poor to overcome poverty, thus leading to economic development. Did you know that money saved today could save you tomorrow? Bronia Katsime, Smart 24 TV, Business Today.
And that's it for the news breakup in this particular morning. And of course, we are going to get into a short commercial break as Jerome Paul Sonko is already here on set, ready to drive you through business. And of course, we shall be returning with the international news, the press review, and wind up the hour. That's with the business tips and quotes. Let's get into a short commercial break. We return. Good morning.